A philosophy of horror for one of my absolute favorite topics, the voice. So we're talking about a disembodied voice that cuts into the very fabric of reality itself. It enters the visual field. It makes things lose their actual consistency, like reality itself starts to unravel. And it stuns the character when he or she hears the voice. And the voice is the superego, demanding that we give everything over to it. So we get a reprieve from the burden of our own freedom, and give it over to the voice. The voice tells us what to do. We do what the voice says. So it's not ethics. It's a reprieve from ethics, from the burden of taking responsibility ourselves. And then we're basically saying the voice told us what to do. The voice gives us a consistency of the world itself by standing in for everything else instead. So we had a really good, clear example of the superego with Junko in Silent Hill F. I really love that dive we did, that video. So check it out if you're interested. But we get this relation with the superego telling us what to do, while we confront and struggle with our own freedom. That's what Silent Hill F is about. And so what's wonderful about Silent Hill F is we get different relations towards our own superego, towards the voice, with its 4 different endings. So that's what's so special about that video game. A very clear example of the voice is David Lynch's Dune. Frank Herbert's Dune has the voice with the Bene Gesserit, voice arresting people. But David Lynch is the master of the voice in his other films as well. And he realizes a way in which the voice is no longer just a feminine thing. He puts the burden of responsibility onto men as well to take on the voice in the form of turning the voice into a little, science fiction gun. That's interesting because the voice is inherently a feminine thing. And the male stance has anxiety towards the voice. We see in David Lynch's Dune this burden to fall in with the voice happens. So Paul Atreides and his army have to use the power of the voice to make a radical change to the world itself. So their fundamentalism that overthrows not just the political power of Arrakis, but the actual fabric of nature itself. So rain falls on the desert planet of Arrakis. A miracle genuinely happens because of the embrace of the voice. Now, it is a bit tenuous saying this is a good use of the superego with the voice and Lynch's Dune. This necessary merging of masculine and feminine positions together with using the voice. So again, we're using the voice as a weapon, and then the Bene Gesserit's also using the voice as a weapon. We see Paul's sister, the little kid, using the voice, etc. This is a necessary thing, the core vehicle by which we make a miracle happen on Arrakis. So our superegos are a part of ourselves, and they're useful, similarly to how being angry makes one able to confront a difficult situation. Right? You're able to take action. You stop thinking, and you make something difficult happen. The superego operates pretty similarly. Don't think, just do. That's the message of the superego. When you have a habit, there's a superegoic side to that habit. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's always superegoic, but it can fall into it, right? When you wake up and you're saying, I'm going to be a writer, I'm going to write, there's a superegoic side to that says, I must write, I must give over or shirk back from the freedom of doing anything else with my day, and I just have to write. That's a good thing, as long as we're not letting it run amok, because the superego and voice demand infinite giving over your freedom in order for you to fall into its enjoyment. So you give over your freedom, it pays you back in enjoyment. When you see this happen in fiction, and characters are giving over themselves to their superegos, they fall into complete thoughtless enjoyment. And the superego demands that we enjoy. It's this, it's the demand to fall into this enjoyment, which is bad for us. We can't fall fully into enjoyment. If I were to get up and only write, it would cause everything else to fall apart, and not in a good way. Now, I wanted to talk about Where We've Made It Dark and how voice functions in my own apocalyptic literary fiction. And it's really twofold and it's nuanced. First, we have my writing style does not use quotation marks. We just have unattributed lines with dashes, which is not cacophony. But there are times when maybe you don't know who said what, and that's something I'm super egoically putting on you, the reader, to struggle with. So we're dealing with voice not as just this super egoic pushing in thing, but as also the words themselves as they cut into the fabric of reality and engage the fabric of reality itself. Language puts a gap into the thing it names. When you name something in this Adam and Eve sense, you are putting a void into the thing you're naming. You're not simply describing what's there. Because there's a discrepancy between the word and the thing. An apple, naming something an apple puts a disjointedness between the object, the apple, its whatness, and its name. Now, my treatment of superego in Where We've Made It Dark is more subtle because our era, our doxa, is incredibly superegoic. When we talk about superego, we aren't talking about the ego and id, because this framework of Freud's between these three things is not that important. It's really just about the superego. Ego is what we lie to ourselves about our stance in the world, the screen from the other parts of ourselves, basically. So it's not our true self. And id, this blind pleasure in violence, etc. It comes out, but there's not much to do about it. There's not really much reason to think about your id, especially compared to your superego. Your superego is what gives us a sense of consistency to the world. It is operative in so many aspects of daily life, of social life, of political life. It's the thing. So when the world falls apart, I don't think we have the rise, this superego that takes over. There are situations where things are falling apart and the character, gives everything over to their superego in order to have some consistency of the world. I think Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive are very clear examples of that, which have very clear examples of the superego figure. Now, when we're talking about apocalypse, the superego falls into not a voice that's loud, but a voice that is silent. This utterly unsettling silence. That's what we get in Where We've Made It Dark, where the world falls away and we have to, in order to have any involvement with the world, we have to fall into some superegoic pressure of ourselves that demands violence and capitulation. But how do we get some distance from that versus falling completely in? That's the inherent tension. I like to refer to Romero's Dawn of the Living Unalive because all of the zaniness in there is so superegoic. Everyone is just go, go, go. Once the fabric of society has fallen away, and you see the ways in which you cling to absurdity super egoically in order to get some distance from the freedom that you're radically exposed to now, and the violence that's inherent to all of that. So in the apocalypse, we're talking about a superego that's silent and how that's unsettling. The superego should be on the outside as an outside pressure, but when society falls apart, it's internalized more directly. There's that distance falls apart in its silence. So we become one with the superego. Basically, that's the difficulty, and the struggle is to get some distance from that again. In Silent Hill F, the bad ending is falling in line with your superego. So it's similar to that. So yeah, there are little ways in which we just have a relation with our superego. There are ways in which the superego is just a violent intrusion, and there are ways in which we get the distance from the superego completely eradicated, and we fall into it in its silence. So we don't even have that outside pressure anymore. That's the basic arc. There is a radical potential, a benefit to the super egoic voice, but usually it's a pretty bad thing.